The light of the captured star at the heart of the grand chamber of the consortium shimmered across 1,000 facets of polished obsidian and living crystal, casting long, distorted shadows that danced like ghosts of fallen empires. Here, in the sanctum of galactic governance, silence was a currency more valuable than any element, and today it was being spent with reckless abandon. The air, a carefully synthesized mix of breathable atmospheres for dozens of assembled species, felt thin and charged with unspoken dread. At the center of the circular chamber, a holographic map of the known galaxy swirled in a slow, majestic spiral, a vortex of blues, golds, and deep violets. But all eyes, all manipulators, all sensory organs, were fixed on a single, unremarkable point of light on its distant fringe, a yellow star designated Sol. Kalen of the Glypton hegemony stood motionless at his floating crystalline podium, his multifaceted body absorbing the ambient light and refracting it into 100 tiny, anxious rainbows. He was ancient, even by the standards of his own long-lived people, and his crystalline structure bore the faint, microscopic fractures of millennia spent in the service of galactic diplomacy. He had seen federations rise from dust and crumble into legend. He had arbitrated wars that had scorched entire spiral arms, yet the unease he felt now was a cold, sharp thing, utterly new. It was an unease born not of a known threat, but of a profound and unnerving ignorance. It was the unease of humanity. For cycles, they had been a minor curiosity, a footnote in the vast celestial catalogue. A species of soft-bodied bipeds from a high-gravity world, barely interstellar, confined to their own small cluster of systems. They were unremarkable in almost every way. Their ships were slow, their energy signatures were primitive, and their diplomatic overtures were polite but maddeningly vague. They asked for nothing, offered little, and expanded with a caution that bordered on paranoia. They were, by all consortium metrics, a species destined for quiet obscurity or swift absorption by a more vigorous power. But the data did not align. The reports from the Vex Imperium, whose territory bordered the so-called Sol Mandate, spoke of patrol vessels that could not be scanned, of communications that could not be deciphered, and of border incursions met not with force, but with a silent, baffling precision that was more unnerving than any weapon. Vex skirmishers, sent to test the humans' resolve, would simply vanish. Not destroyed, their energy signatures did not flare into oblivion. They were just gone, their last transmissions a cascade of confused sensor readings and a rising tone of panic. "They are weak," a harsh, grating voice echoed through the chamber, shattering the fragile silence. The sound was like stone grinding on metal. War Primarch Xyler of the Vex Imperium stood at his own podium, a towering figure of black and crimson chitin, his mandibles clicking with predatory impatience. His species was a monument to brutal efficiency, a warrior culture that saw the galaxy as a challenge to be conquered, not a society to be nurtured. They hide behind their empty borders because they fear the light of true power. Their mandate is a cage of their own making, a testament to their evolutionary failure. Xyler gestured with a scythed claw towards the hologram of human space. "For generations, my patrols have prodded their territory. We have sent probes, we have sent skirmishers. Their response? Nothing. Silence. Their ships retreat. Their colonies are shielded behind energy fields that, while stubbornly resilient, show no offensive capability. They are turtles hiding in a shell that we will inevitably crack." Kalen felt a low-frequency vibration hum through his crystalline form, the Glypton equivalent of a sigh. He had debated Xyler 1,000 times before. The War Primarch's logic was always the same, a straight line drawn from observation to conclusion with no room for nuance or doubt. Strength was manifest. Power was demonstrated. Anything else was a lie. "Your interpretation assumes a universal metric for power, War Primarch," Kalen projected, his own voice a series of soft, resonant chimes translated into the consortium's lingua franca by the podium's field generator. "It assumes all species aspire to the same expressions of dominance. Yet the humans remain an anomaly. An anomaly demands caution, not aggression." He amplified a section of the galactic map. A faint, almost invisible web of lines appeared in the space the Vex had been probing. "These are gravimetric distortions, faint, fleeting. Our deepest scans can barely resolve them. They appear whenever a Vex patrol approaches a human installation and then vanishes. There is no energy discharge, no debris, no radiation signature consistent with known weapons technology. The ships are simply not there anymore. This is not the hallmark of a weak or primitive species. It is the work of a technology we do not comprehend." A low murmur rippled through the assembled delegates. The lumina, beings of pure energy contained in shimmering containment fields, pulsed with agitated light. The arboreal nautiloids rustled their leafy appendages, their thoughts shared through a silent, empathic network that now radiated a deep sense of collective anxiety. Xyler scoffed, a rattling exhalation of heated gas. Tricks, illusions, a clever form of localized jamming to mask their incompetence. They are hiding their losses, broadcasting false data to appear mysterious. It is a bluff and a desperate one. My fleets are massing on their border. We will call this bluff, and when their shell cracks, the consortium will see the truth. They are nothing, a brief, flickering candle in a galaxy of suns. A candle that casts a very long shadow, Kalen countered, his chimes growing colder, sharper. You speak of their technology, but you ignore their psychology, which is perhaps the greater mystery. We have their history, recovered from their own public broadcasts before they encrypted all transmissions. A history of brutal self-conflict, of apocalyptic ideologies, of world-spanning wars that brought them to the brink of extinction multiple times. They are a species that has looked into the abyss of its own nature and somehow recoiled. They forged a unified world government from the ashes of their own near destruction. He let that statement hang in the air, allowing its weight to settle in the minds of the delegates. Most species in the consortium had achieved unity through slow, peaceful consolidation or the gentle pressure of a dominant philosophy. The humans had achieved it through fire and blood, on a scale that was horrifyingly intimate. A species that has survived itself is not to be underestimated, Kalen continued. Their current restraint, their passivity, is not in their nature. It is a choice, a deliberate, calculated act, and that is what I fear, War Primarch, not their weapons, but their reasoning. Why would a species with such a violent past choose such absolute peace? What did they learn from their own darkness that we have yet to comprehend? Xyler's mandibles clenched. They learned fear. They are a species of cowards traumatized by their own savage infancy. They do not dare to unleash their potential because they know it would destroy them. We will simply provide the external pressure to complete the process. The Vex Imperium will expand into the territories they so meekly refuse to claim. It is our right. It is the way of the galaxy. The debate raged for hours, a storm of competing philosophies and strategic anxieties. The trade guilds argued for sanctions against the Vex, fearing the disruption to commerce. The younger, more ambitious species watched with hungry eyes, eager to see a galactic power humbled, be it the Vex or the mysterious humans. The elder races, like the Glyptons, cautioned patience, their long histories filled with the ghosts of empires that had perished through arrogance. Through it all, the hologram of human space remained quiet, a tiny island of resolute calm in a sea of galactic turmoil. It offered no answers, it betrayed no secrets, it simply existed, a silent testament to a question no one in the consortium could answer. The session was finally suspended, the chamber steeped in a tense, unresolved deadlock. The Vex fleets would continue their advance. The consortium would continue to watch. And humanity would remain a puzzle, locked behind a door no one had yet dared to open. As Kalen retreated to his private meditation chamber, the shimmering light of the central star felt cold and remote. He replayed the data in his crystalline mind, the gravimetric whispers, the unbreakable encryption, the silent, disappearing ships. It felt like watching a predator holding perfectly still in the tall grass, its presence betrayed only by the unnatural silence where there should be life. The Vex believed they were the hunters. Kalen was becoming increasingly certain that they were the prey, and they were walking, with all the arrogance of their kind, directly into the predator's patient, waiting jaws. He felt a profound chill, a resonance that vibrated through his very being. It was the feeling of standing on the edge of a paradigm shift, a moment when all the old rules were about to be rendered meaningless. And he feared that when the galaxy finally understood the truth of humanity, it would be far too late to escape the consequences. The days that followed were a torment of waiting. Tense silence dominated the halls of the consortium citadel. Every delegate, every aide, every functionary was tethered to the live data feeds from the Perseus Arm, where the Vex Armada, a colossal wave of jagged, menacing warships, had arrived at the edge of the demarcation line, separating their territory from the Sol Mandate. It was a fleet of overwhelming power, a statement of intent written in the language of focused energy and armored hulls. They did not cross the line, not yet. They sat in menacing formation, broadcasting demands for territorial concessions and unconditional surrender on all open frequencies, their transmissions filled with the bombastic rhetoric of conquerors. And from the human side there was only silence, not a flicker of a response, not a single ship moved to intercept them. The human colonies on the border worlds remained shielded, their energy output steady and calm, as if they were unaware of the apocalyptic force gathering on their doorstep. This serene inaction was, to the galactic community, more terrifying than any declaration of war. It was incomprehensible. It defied all known models of strategic behavior. A cornered animal was supposed to snarl, to bare its teeth. The humans were simply waiting. In the Grand Chamber, which was now in permanent session, the tension was a physical presence. War Primarch Xyler stood at his podium, radiating an aura of triumphant vindication. "You see," he boomed, his voice grating with satisfaction. "They do nothing. Their nerve has broken. They are paralyzed by fear. Their bluff has been called, and they have folded. When my fleet crosses that line, their precious mandate will shatter like glass." Kalen remained still, his internal thoughts a vortex of calculation and dread. It was not fear he sensed from the humans. It was something else, a profound, almost unnerving level of control. It was the stillness of a grandmaster contemplating a chessboard, not the paralysis of a terrified victim. He felt a deep, instinctual certainty that they were all missing a crucial piece of the puzzle, a variable so fundamental that its absence rendered all their calculations meaningless. Then it happened, not with a bang, but with a whisper. A single, polite, perfectly encrypted message was transmitted from the human capital on Earth directly to the central processing core of the consortium citadel. It bypassed all diplomatic channels, all intermediary protocols, and presented itself directly to the assembled delegates. Its contents were brief and simple. Ambassador Eva Rostova, representing the Terran Mandate, requests permission to address the Consortium Council in person. Her vessel is en route. Estimated time of arrival, immediate. A wave of shock rippled through the chamber. Immediate? The human capital was light years away. Even with the fastest consortium hyperdrives, the journey would take cycles. Before anyone could even formulate a response, a new icon appeared on the central hologram. A single, tiny vessel, impossibly small and sleek, identified as the UNS Stargazer. It was not at the edge of the system. It was holding a perfect, stationary orbit directly above the Citadel. There had been no warning, no FTL signature, no hyperspace rupture, no gravimetric wave. One moment the space had been empty. The next, the ship was there. The Citadel's defense grid, one of the most sophisticated sensor networks in the galaxy, hadn't registered a thing. It was as if the ship had simply decided to exist in that specific location. Panic and confusion erupted in the chamber. Xyler's mandibles clicked in furious disbelief. Impossible! A trick! It must be a cloaked drone that was waiting in position. But the Citadel's deep range sensors confirmed it. The ship was real. It was manned. Its energy signature was stable, but of a type they had never encountered before. It was impossibly efficient, leaking almost no waste heat or radiation. It was, for all intents and purposes, a ghost. Permission was granted, a formality more than a decision. A human was coming. The Enigma was about to walk into their midst. The airlock to the Grand Chamber hissed open, the sound unnaturally loud in the sudden, expectant silence. The figure that emerged was not a towering warrior or a robed mystic. It was a woman of average height for her species, clad in a simple, dark blue uniform devoid of any rank or ornamentation. Her hair was dark, pulled back from a face that was calm, composed, and utterly unreadable. Her eyes, a deep, contemplative brown, swept across the chamber, taking in the myriad alien forms, the colossal architecture, and the swirling galaxy at its heart. There was no fear in her gaze, no awe, only a quiet, professional assessment. This was Ambassador Eva Rostova. She walked to the guest podium at the center of the chamber floor with a steady, unhurried grace. Her footsteps were silent on the polished obsidian. She did not seem intimidated by the scale of the room or the weight of 1,000 alien stairs. She seemed serene. "On behalf of the Terran Mandate," she began, her voice calm and measured, perfectly modulated by the universal translator, "I thank you for granting this audience." Xyler could not contain his rage. "Your vessel's arrival is a violation of all known physical laws. Explain your methods, human. What primitive trickery is this?" Rostova turned her gaze to the Vex War Primarch. Her expression did not change. "Our method of transit is not a trick, War Primarch. It is simply our technology. I am not here to discuss physics. I am here because you have massed an invasion fleet on our border and issued ultimatums. I am here to provide clarification." "Clarification?" Xyler snarled. "The only clarification needed is the sight of your worlds burning. You are a species of cowards, and your time is at an end." The ambassador looked away from Xyler as if he were a minor distraction and addressed the chamber as a whole. The consortium has debated our nature for a long time. You have labeled us passive, weak, fearful. You have done so because we do not conquer. We do not expand into occupied space. We do not brandish our power. You have fundamentally misunderstood our motives. Our restraint is not born of fear. It is born of a burden. She raised her hand, and the central hologram shifted. The view of the galaxy was replaced by a live feed of the Vex Armada, a terrifying swarm of warships poised like daggers at the throat of a human colony world. Then, a new icon appeared, a single small human ship, the UNS Stargazer, the very vessel she had arrived in, now positioned a significant distance from the Vex fleet. Your War Primarch believes we are bluffing, Rostova said, her voice remaining perfectly level. He believes that when pressed, our shell will crack. He is correct about one thing: we do not wish for a conventional war. The collateral damage, the loss of life, the sheer inefficiency of it, it is something our species has worked very hard to move beyond. Therefore, we will not meet force with force. We will, as I said, provide clarification. On the hologram, the lone human ship did nothing. It did not power up weapons. It did not raise its shields. Instead, a barely perceptible shimmer emanated from it, a distortion in space itself, like heat haze on a summer road. "What is this?" Xyler demanded, his chitinous plates rattling. "Another light show, a final, pathetic gesture." Kalen leaned forward, his crystalline form vibrating with a sudden, dawning horror. He was looking not at the ship, but at the sensor readings scrolling beside the hologram. The gravimetric sensors were screaming. Space-time itself was warping. The numbers were impossible, defying all known models of energy and mass. "What you call space," Ambassador Rostova explained, her voice as calm as a lecturer in a quiet university hall, "is to us a manipulable dimension. We do not travel through it in the way you do. We do not punch holes in it or fold it. We reshape it. We move it. Our restraint has never been about our capacity for violence. It has been about our responsibility to the structural integrity of the universe itself." The shimmer around the human ship intensified. And then the Vex Armada in its entirety, a fleet of warships that could have laid waste to a dozen star systems, was contained. Space itself, the very fabric of reality, had been pinched off around the fleet. The stars behind them warped and bent, their light contorting as if seen through a flawed lens. The Vex ships began to drift, their engines firing uselessly, their weapons silent. They were no longer in normal space. They were trapped in a bubble of distorted space-time, severed from the rest of the universe. There was no explosion, no violence, no sound. It was a display of power so absolute, so fundamental, it transcended the very concept of warfare. It was like a god plucking a pebble from a stream. The chamber was utterly silent. The delegates were frozen, their minds struggling to process what they had just witnessed. Xyler stared at the hologram, his mandibles hanging open, his entire martial philosophy rendered into a meaningless absurdity in a single, silent moment. He had brought a sword to a fight with a being that could control the ground beneath his feet. "Your fleet is unharmed," Rostova stated, her voice cutting through the stunned silence. "They are currently being relocated to a sector of uninhabited, barren space several thousand light-years from our border. They will be released in one standard cycle, with enough energy in their reserves to begin the long journey home. We trust this will give you time to reconsider your Imperium's expansionist policies." She turned her gaze back to Kalen. For the first time, he saw a flicker of something in her eyes. It was not pride. It was not arrogance. It was a profound, ancient weariness. The look of a parent who had just had to discipline a reckless child. "We did not want to reveal this," she said softly, her voice now carrying a heavy, sorrowful weight. "This capability to reshape reality, it is a terrible power. In the hands of a younger, less disciplined species, as we once were, it would have been a tool of ultimate conquest. It could have unraveled the galaxy. Our mandate of Saul was not a policy of isolation. It was a quarantine. A self-imposed quarantine, to protect the rest of you from a power we were not sure even we could responsibly control." Kalen finally understood. The disappearing patrols, the unscannable ships, the impossible FTL, it was all the same principle. The humans weren't moving their ships, they were moving space itself. Their restraint wasn't weakness, it was an act of almost unimaginable ethical strength. They had the power of gods, and they had chosen to live as mortals. The grand chamber of the consortium, for the first time in its long history, was united. Not by treaty or by trade, but by a single, overwhelming emotion that transcended species and culture. Absolute, paralyzing awe. In the aftermath of the demonstration, a new kind of silence fell upon the grand chamber, a silence born not of tension, but of profound reassessment. Every delegate, from the most ancient to the most newly inducted, was forced to re-examine their civilization's place in the cosmos. The Vex, the galaxy's most feared warriors, had been neutralized without a single shot fired. Their entire armada moved like a piece on a game board. The foundation of galactic power, fleets, weapons, strategic position, had been revealed as a child's fantasy. The humans operated on a level of reality that the rest of the consortium had not even known existed. War Primarch Xyler had not spoken a word. He remained at his podium, a statue of blackened chitin, his usual aggressive energy utterly extinguished. He was a creature of force, and he had just witnessed a power that made force irrelevant. His empire, his philosophy, his very identity had been dismantled in a single, silent moment. He was a relic, and he knew it. It was Kalen who finally broke the stillness. He moved his podium forward, a gesture of humility and respect, until he was closer to the human ambassador. His resonant chimes were soft, stripped of their usual diplomatic formality. "Ambassador Rostova," he projected, his voice carrying a new tone of reverence. We have misjudged you, profoundly. Your species' restraint is the single greatest act of wisdom this galaxy has ever known." Eva Rostova inclined her head slightly, a gesture of acknowledgement. The weariness in her eyes seemed to deepen. "Wisdom is a heavy thing, Counselor Kalen. It is often indistinguishable from sorrow. When my ancestors first unlocked the principles of space-time manipulation, they saw two paths ahead. One was the path of empire, of infinite expansion, of bending the universe to our will. We would have become as gods, and we would have been utterly alone in a galaxy of our own making. The other path was restraint, to recognize that some power is too great to be used, too fundamental to be wielded as a tool, to choose to be a part of the universe, not its master." She paused, her gaze sweeping across the stunned faces of the assembled delegates. "We chose the second path. We created the Sol Mandate, a binding principle for our entire species. We vowed to never use our ultimate capability to impose our will on another sentient species. We would watch, we would learn, and we would only intervene as a last resort to prevent a catastrophe. Your War Primarch's actions forced us to that resort." A delegate from the Lumina, a swirling vortex of blue and white light, pulsed a question. "You speak of this power as a burden. You quarantined yourselves. But why? What did you fear would happen if you used it freely?" "The universe is a delicate structure," Rostova replied, her tone becoming grave. "The laws of physics are not as rigid as you believe them to be. They are more like a tightly woven tapestry. Every time we manipulate the fabric of space-time, we pull at a thread. A small adjustment, like moving a fleet, is manageable. The tapestry settles. But to use this power on a galactic scale, to move stars, to create wormholes, to erase fleets from existence rather than simply relocating them, would be to pull 1,000 threads at once. The tapestry would unravel. Reality itself could fray. We do not know what lies on the other side of that fraying, but we know it would be the end of everything as we understand it. That is the burden we carry, the knowledge that we hold the key to our own and your annihilation." A deep, shuddering hum passed through Kalen's crystalline body. It was the Glypton expression of a concept for which other languages had no word, a terror so profound it bordered on the sacred. Humanity had not been hiding from the galaxy. They had been protecting the galaxy from themselves. An alliance was no longer a matter of debate. It was a foregone conclusion. The consortium did not offer humanity a seat at the table. They, in essence, offered to build a new table around them. The Vex Imperium, its leadership shattered and its military might revealed as obsolete, humbly accepted a place in this new order, their aggression replaced by a terrified, newfound respect. Treaties were drafted, not of mutual defense against conventional threats, but of shared principles, of a commitment to cosmic preservat.